Hi guys, welcome back to part 3 of the production tutorial series. Today we're going to be looking at synthesis again, and yet again we're going to be using Native Instruments Massive to create the sound, although you could follow along in any other soft synth. We're actually going to be recreating a very famous Moog bass patch that's synonymous with Stevie Wonders' song Boogie On Reggae Woman, and here is a little demo of it in a recreation of the song I did earlier today. So as you can see, it's a very cool sound, so let's get started. Okay, so it's a very simple patch yet again. It's just 3 oscillators and a filter. So let's get started. We'll go File, New Sound to initialize the patch. And as I said before, it's 3 oscillators. The first one is going to be a saw wave. The second one is going to be a sine triangle wave. And the third one is going to be a triangle wave. So let's set up the first oscillator now. Let's make sure this is set to square saw 1. And we'll bring the amp down to just after 2 o'clock and push the filter up into filter 1. We're going to set the pitch to -12. Okay, and we'll turn on the second oscillator. And we're going to make sure this is sine triangle, and the wavetable position we're going to set at 12 o'clock, so we're getting a little both sine and triangle wave. And we're going to bring the amp down again and push this one into filter 1 as well. And we're also going to set this down to -24. Thirdly, we're going to turn on the third oscillator, and we're going to set that to sine triangle as well, except we're going to keep the wavetable all the way to the right, which will just give us a pure triangle wave. We're going to bring the amp down a little bit and push this one into filter 1, and also set this to -24. So now if I play, it's a good start. It's not quite what we want, but it's getting there. So the next thing we need to do is set up the amp envelope slightly. So we're going to go to envelope 4, which is always connected to the amp mod, unless you change it. And we're just going to make some slight changes here. We're going to bring the attack down. Not all the way down, just a little bit over the last click. And we're also going to bring the release up a little bit. Okay, that should do for the amp envelope. Next we're going to look at the low frequency oscillator, and we're going to set up that kind of analog emulation that I talked about in the first tutorial. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this sine wave so the peak is in the center. I'm going to push the X fade curve all the way to the top because we only want the top one. And we're going to set the rate to just past about 10 o'clock, I'd say. And we're going to bring the amp down a tiny touch. We're going to click on LFO5 on the D-pad, and we're going to assign that to the pitch of oscillator 1. We're going to do the same thing for oscillator 2 and oscillator 3. I'm going to set these to 0.10 for each one. Okay, so that's all the oscillators done. Let's go on to the filters now. So what we want is a low pass 4, which is the 24 dB filter. And we're going to bring the cutoff right down until it's about 2 clicks up from the bottom. And we're going to bring the resonance to just past 9 o'clock. Okay, so that's the filter. So if I play now, we'll bring the cutoff back to where it was before. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to assign an envelope to the filter. So we're going to go to envelope 1, and we're going to make some changes here. We're going to bring the attack up, and we're also going to bring the release down a little bit, and we're also going to bring the level down. And bring the release up a little bit more. And that should be about right. So we're going to click on the little D-pad next to envelope 1, and we're going to assign this to filter 1 cutoff. And we're going to click on the 1, and we're going to drag up to about 11 o'clock. So now if I play, getting a much nicer sound, but it's not quite right yet. The last thing we need to do with the filters is assign velocity to the filter as well. So we're going to look down here in the macro control section, and we're going to click the D-pad next to velocity, and we're going to assign that to the next box over for the cutoff. And we're going to click and drag up until it's just before the end of the blue line. So if I play again, we're almost there with the sound, getting it to what we want. Last thing to do is just to assign some effects. So we're going to assign the browner tube, or browner, and bring the dry wet down to about 9 o'clock, and bring the drive down as well. And we're also going to push the main volume up a little bit. And that's pretty much what we want for the sound. Last thing we're going to do is look in the voicing tab, and we're going to set it to monophonic and legato. One last thing to check is just to look in the oscillator tab again, and we're going to make a couple of changes here. We want to change this to rate for the glide and bring the glide down a tiny touch. And we also want to set up the vibrato section now. So we're going to bring both of them right down to 0. I'm going to drag these down for a moment. Now the vibrato should be set up on the mod wheel, as I've said before, as we can see down here in the macro control section. If it's not, just right click, MIDI learn, and move your mod wheel, or whichever control you want to use for vibrato. Now we're just going to click on the top one for rate, and we're going to drag it up, to about 1 o'clock. And we're going to drag the depth up to about 9 o'clock. So finally, and that's the sound. Just to add, if you further want to enhance the sound to get it even closer to the original Stevie Wonder version, then running it through a compressor or guitar amp or tube saturation, and then maybe a little bit of wah-wah as well, will give you the Boogie On Reggae Woman sound even closer than what Massive can achieve on its own. So anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I hope you found it useful, and stay tuned for the next one.